What could lead a millionaire to keep his maid's childhood photo and reveal a shocking secret at Christmas? This question hangs in the air, creating a mystery that echoes on the walls of Thomas's luxurious mansion. As the bells ring and the lights twinkle, the festive mood seems to hide a profound truth that could change everything. In the vibrant city of New York, where the glitter of the holidays contrasts with the shadows of undisclosed secrets, Thomas, a real estate mogul, lives surrounded by wealth and success. However, this prosperity is not enough to fill a void he carries within himself. Since childhood, he has struggled with his family's expectations and past traumas, always seeking approval but constantly feeling inadequate. His dream of being accepted and loved shaped his decisions, leading him to build a life of excess, but also of loneliness. Thomas's mansion, decorated for Christmas, is a reflection of his life, beautiful on the outside, but full of secrets and insecurities on the inside. He keeps a childhood photo of his maid, Sarah, in a special place, a gesture few would understand. Sarah, a loving and dedicated woman, always took care of Thomas as if he were a son. The interactions between them are simple but profound. She often reminded him that true happiness lies not in possessions, but in human connections. Her presence in his life brings a comfort he can't find anywhere, and yet he feels unable to open his heart. Social pressure leads you to surround yourself with people who often don't understand you. At gala dinners, he observes the fake smiles and superficial conversations, while loneliness becomes an increasingly heavy burden. In moments of introspection, Thomas asks himself, what really matters in life? These reflections become more intense as Christmas approaches, a period that, for him, is filled with memories of loss and regret. On a cold December day, as the snow fell softly outside, Thomas decided it was time to reveal the truth he held in his heart. He sat down with Sarah, who was preparing Christmas dinner, and looked into her eyes. The tension in the air was palpable. What he was about to say could not only change their lives, but also the dynamics of everything they've built together. He pulled out her childhood photo, a portrait that showed her radiant, full of dreams and hopes. The past he held was about to intertwine with the present in an unexpected way. As the lights of the Christmas tree reflected in their faces, Thomas realized that true wealth lay not in his bank, but in the courage to face the ghosts of the past. He knew that revealing his secret could not only free him, but also allow Sarah to see the value she has always had in her life. Christmas would never be the same again, and they were both about to embark on a journey of self-discovery, friendship, and overcoming. With every word that left his lips, Thomas hoped that the connection he had always had with Sarah would become even stronger. He wanted her to know that her past didn't define her, but rather her value as a person. When he finally revealed the secret, a silence filled the room, and the two stared at each other, knowing they were about to change their lives forever. What would happen next would be a testimony to how love and truth can transform even the deepest wounds. Thomas sat at the kitchen table, where the smell of Christmas dinner filled the air. He watched Sarah as she arranged the dishes, her face illuminated by the soft light emanating from the lantern. To him, she had always been a motherly figure, someone who embraced his vulnerability, but that connection now felt fraught with tension. The photo he held between his fingers was a symbol of a past he held fondly, but also with fear. Thomas's eyes drifted to the window, where the snow was falling at a leisurely pace. He remembered Christmases past, when the house was filled with laughter and joy, but also an emptiness that never seemed to dissipate. The weight of his family's expectations has always accompanied him. The image of his father, a strict man who never seemed satisfied, was a constant echo in his mind. The incessant search for approval had led him to accumulate wealth, but loneliness made all of this irrelevant. Sarah, noticing the silence that had settled in, turned and met Thomas's distant gaze. "You seem thoughtful, Thomas. What is happening?" The concern in his voice was genuine, and that only made the revelation more difficult. Thomas hesitated, doubt running like a turbulent river through his mind. He wanted to open his heart, but insecurity paralyzed him. I have something important to tell you," he finally said, his voice shaking. His heart was beating fast in his chest, and he wondered if the words that were about to come out would make sense of everything he felt. "Remember that photo you gave me from your childhood?" "Of course," replied Sarah, a nostalgic smile appearing on her face. "It was such a simple time. I had so many dreams." Thomas interrupted, swallowing hard. "That's what I need to talk about. I kept this photo because you always reminded me of what really matters in life." He took a deep breath, fighting the avalanche of emotions that invaded him. "But I also have a secret, something I've never shared with anyone." Sarah frowned, concern now turning to curiosity. "What do you mean?" "You can tell me, Thomas. I'm here to listen to you." The words seemed stuck in his throat. The truth he carried was heavy and terrifying. Thomas remembered how he always felt like an imposter, a man surrounded by success, but unable to truly connect with those around him. He remembered the times when, instead of opening up to Sarah, he pulled away, afraid that she would see his weaknesses. I'm a failure, Sarah. An emotional failure. I always tried to be the best, but I could never accept who I really am." Sarah's gaze softened, as if she could see beyond the facade Thomas had built. "We all have our struggles, Thomas. The important thing is what we do with them. You are not what you have, but who you are." Your words were like a balm for his soul, but insecurity still prevented him from opening up completely. "I feel like I will never live up to expectations. I built this life, this fortune, but loneliness. Loneliness is a very high price to pay." He looked into her eyes, seeking some form of understanding. "And now, saving this photo, I realize that perhaps I have lost the true meaning of Christmas." Sarah walked over, placing her hand over his. "You don't have to carry this weight alone, Thomas. Sometimes true wealth lies in being vulnerable. You don't have to be perfect to be loved." The simplicity of her words struck Thomas like a ray of light in the darkness. As they talked, Thomas began to realize that his doubts weren't just about himself, but also about his place in the world. There was constant pressure to stay on top, to show that he was successful. But every time he found himself surrounded by people who admired him, he felt a growing loneliness, as if he were in a golden cage. "I have friends, but are they really friends?" he questioned, the tone of his voice thick with uncertainty. "Most are only interested in what I can offer. It makes me wonder if any of them really care about me." Sarah squeezed his hand, solidifying the connection that had always existed between them. "You deserve relationships that are true, Thomas. People who value you, not what you have. Sometimes you have to move away from the superficial to find the depth." These words resonated in his mind, and Thomas found himself reflecting on the interactions he had with those around him. The parties, the luxurious dinners, the incessant search for more. He felt like an actor on a stage, playing a role that didn't belong to him. The idea of starting over seemed impossible, but at the same time, necessary. "What if I fail again?" he questioned, fear showing in his voice. "What if I try to be real, but people don't accept who I really am? What if you discover that the truth is liberating?" Sarah replied, her voice calm and steady. "Sometimes failure is just part of the path to success. And you can always start over if you wish." Her words planted a seed of hope in his heart. Thomas realized that the journey of self-discovery would not be easy, but perhaps it was the right path to take. He looked at Sarah, feeling a new determination well up within him. Christmas could be a new beginning, an opportunity to embrace the truth and pursue what really matters. With a new sense of purpose, Thomas decided he was ready to face his fears. He couldn't change the past, but he could shape his future. And with that, he looked at Sarah's childhood photo with new eyes, understanding that true beauty was in the memories we created and the connections we cultivated. Christmas was approaching, and what was once a symbol of loneliness now became a promise of change and rediscovery. Thomas sat at the kitchen table, the smell of Christmas dinner still filling the air, but now with a different weight. The glow of the flashlight seemed to dance on the walls, reflecting the internal struggle he was having. Sarah continued to arrange the dishes, but Thomas felt distant, as if an invisible barrier separated him from what should be a joyful moment. He looked at Sarah's childhood photo, still holding it between his fingers. It was a simple image, but filled with memories and feelings that he couldn't fully decipher. The connection he felt with her was strong, almost palpable, but also full of doubts. What was he really doing there? He wondered if he was ready to open his heart and share his weaknesses, or if that would just create more distance between them. "Thomas, are you still there?" Sarah's voice brought him back to reality. He saw the concern in her eyes and felt pressure in his chest. The feeling of being an imposter tormented him, and he feared that by opening up he might shatter her image of him. "I really need to know what's going on. You can trust me." He knew the words needed to come out, but insecurity paralyzed him. The fear of losing what little he had built, of being seen as a failure, left him in a constant state of alert. I'm scared, Sarah. Fear of being who I really am. Fear of not being accepted." She moved closer, the concern in her eyes turning to determination. "No one is perfect, Thomas. We all have our struggles. If you don't open up, you can never find the peace you seek." Her words echoed in his mind, and he felt a wave of emotion rising within him. What if I fail again? Fear showed in his voice. What happens if I try to be real, but it alienates you and the people who matter to me? Sarah's expression hardened, and Thomas realized she knew the truth could be painful. You have to try. What you fear may be exactly what you need. Sometimes failure is the first step to something greater. The tension between them increased, and Thomas found himself in a dilemma. His mind was torn between the desire to open up and the impulse to protect himself. He remembered how he had always withdrawn from people when things got difficult, as if building walls around his heart was the solution. But now, Sarah's presence challenged him to look within and confront his fears. As he contemplated his situation, flashes of his past life began to invade his mind. He remembered his youth, the years dedicated to achieving financial success. The luxurious parties, the dinners with influential people, everything seemed to shine and promise happiness, but each achievement only left him emptier. What had he really sacrificed? True friendships, simple moments of joy, and even love. Loneliness became a constant companion, and the image of his father, always demanding, followed him, reminding him that nothing he achieved was enough. "I feel lost, Sarah. As if I had everything, but at the same time, nothing." He looked at her, seeking a glimmer of understanding. "And now, with this pressure to be perfect, I feel like I'm about to fall apart." Sarah took a deep breath as if weighing her words. "Thomas, you don't have to be perfect. You just need to be you. And that is enough." Her sincerity touched him deeply, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to fail once again. The fear of not being accepted, of not being loved for who he really was, paralyzed him. What would happen if he revealed himself and everyone walked away? The idea of losing what little he had built was terrifying. At that moment, something inside him began to change. He realized he was tired of living this lie, of being a character in a story that wasn't his. Determined to confront his demons, he decided to take the first step. Maybe I should try, even if I'm scared. But what if I don't know how? Sarah smiled, an encouraging smile. "You will find out. It's a learning experience. Life is full of ups and downs, and we are all learning. You are not alone." As they talked, Thomas began to feel a slight relief. He remembered his friendship with Lucas, a longtime friend who had always supported him but who recently seemed distant. He realized that he had also withdrawn from him, fearing that his vulnerability would be seen as weakness. "I don't want to lose the people who really care about me," he murmured. "But it feels like I'm losing everyone around me." "Then start opening up to them," Sarah suggested. "And when you are real, you will attract the right people into your life." The idea of reconnecting with Lucas encouraged him, but the doubts still persisted. He wondered if he would be able to face his friends' reactions, if they would be welcoming, or if they would just walk away. Insecurity was a heavy burden, and memories of past failures haunted him. However, Sarah was right. If he wanted to change his life, he needed to face his fears. With a new sense of purpose, Thomas decided he was ready to take the first step. He looked at Sarah's photo again, no longer as a symbol of his past, but as a reminder of what really mattered, human connection, sincerity, and the chance to start over. Christmas would not just be a day to celebrate, but an opportunity to redefine your path and cultivate the relationships that really mattered. As the snow continued to fall outside, bringing with it a sense of calm, Thomas took a deep breath, feeling that maybe, just maybe, the true spirit of Christmas was about to be reborn within him. As the conversation unfolded between Thomas and Sarah, the weight of their words hung in the air, mixing with the aroma of Christmas dinner. Thomas felt a subtle change, a light breeze that seemed to blow toward his heart. He looked into Sarah's eyes and realized that behind the worry was genuine hope. Hope that he could find his way back to himself. Insecurity still enveloped him, like a thick fog that made it difficult to see the path ahead. However, Sarah's determination challenged him to face this fog. He remembered Lucas, how their friendship had been a source of joy, but also how he had withdrawn, as if the fear of being vulnerable had convinced him that solitude was the only safe option. The idea of opening up to his friend seemed terrifying, but it was also liberating. "I don't know if I can do this," he confessed, his voice shaking. "What if Lucas doesn't understand? What if he turns his back on me, like others have?" Sarah moved even closer, the sincerity in her gaze becoming an anchor amid the storm of emotions raging within him. "If he's a true friend, Tom, he'll be there for you. And you need to give him the chance to be that friend. You can't keep hiding." The logic in her words resonated in his mind. He knew he had built a fortress around himself, a protection against pain and rejection. But now, this fortress became a prison, and he was tired of living like this. The idea of allowing Lucas to see his flaws and insecurities made him panic, but it also lit a flame of hope. What he really wanted was to be loved and accepted, not for his image of success, but for who he really was. "Maybe I have to try," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "But what if I fail?" "Failing is part of the process," Sarah replied, her voice soft but firm. "The important thing is that you are trying. Every step counts. Think of it as a journey, not a destination. And remember, you are not alone. I will be here to support you." Thomas felt a knot untie in his chest. The idea of not being alone, of having someone by your side to face the challenges, was comforting. He knew he needed to face his fears, not just about Lucas, but about himself. The pressure to be perfect, to meet the expectations he himself had placed upon his shoulders, had isolated him so much that, in a moment of clarity, he realized he had built his life around an ideal that didn't exist. As Christmas dinner continued to be prepared, he remembered what Christmas really meant: togetherness, love, forgiveness. He looked at Sarah and saw not just a friend, but a symbol of hope. It was time to put aside the weight of perfection and embrace the reality of your life with its imperfections and challenges. "I want to try," he said, his voice now firmer. "I want to open up to Lucas and the people who care about me. I want to be true." Sarah smiled, a gleam of approval in her eyes. "That's all you need. The truth is powerful, and it may be the key to the freedom you seek." The weight that once weighed him down began to lift, and a new determination began to grow within him. He realized that by opening up, he would not only be freeing himself, but also allowing others into his life in a more meaningful way. The idea of reconnecting with Lucas, of being vulnerable and real, was scary but also exciting. He wanted Lucas to know that he was willing to face his demons. Christmas Day now meant much more than just dinner or presents. It was a new beginning, an opportunity to heal old wounds and forge new connections. The loneliness that had been his companion for so long began to dissipate, giving way to hope and the possibility of a brighter future. As the night wore on and the church bells announced the arrival of Christmas, Thomas felt a warmth spread through his body. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was willing to face it. Deciding to make the connection with Lucas, he got up from the table, his heart racing, but now no longer paralyzed by fear. "Sarah, can you help me prepare for this?" he asked, a hesitant smile forming on his lips. "Of course, I'm here for you," Sarah replied with a twinkle in her eye. "Let's do this together." Thomas realized he didn't need to face his fears alone. With every step he took, he felt stronger, freer. The real Christmas was about to be reborn within him, and he was ready to embrace this new life, full of uncertainty, but also infinite possibilities. Thomas sat back at the table, the warmth of Christmas dinner now mixed with butterflies in his stomach. The desire to open up to Lucas pulsed like a drum in her chest. The conversation with Sarah had given him courage, but uncertainty still haunted him. What would he say? How would Lucas react? He took a deep breath, trying to organize the confusing thoughts that were cluttering his mind. "Is everything okay, Tom?" Sarah asked, noticing the change in his face. "You seem distant." He forced a smile, but insecurity tightened his heart again. "Just thinking about what's next. I don't know if I'm ready." "Ready or not, you've already taken the first step. What matters is that you are moving toward change," she responded, placing her hand over his. "And remember, change takes time. It doesn't have to be perfect." Thomas nodded, but the thought of failing Lucas haunted him. He remembered times when he had closed himself off, when conversations that could have happened didn't happen. Each memory was a reminder of the times he had chosen silence, the safety of solitude over the risk of vulnerability. He wondered how Lucas would feel knowing that he had fought so hard against his own demons, while at the same time walking away from someone he cared about. As the meal continued, the conversation around the table flowed naturally. The laughter and stories shared were a balm for his soul, but at the same time, he felt like an intruder in his own life. The table, full of love and support, seemed distant from the internal battle that was going on. He looked at his friends, at their happy faces, and wondered if he could ever feel as light as they seemed. When dinner came to an end, Thomas jumped to his feet. "I need to leave for a moment," he said, voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "I need fresh air. Can I go with you?" Sarah offered, noticing the struggle in his eyes. "No, I need to do this alone," he replied, feeling like he needed to face this moment without support, despite knowing that Sarah would always be there for him. He walked out the door, leaving the warmth of home behind. The cold night air enveloped him, and he looked up at the stars shining in the sky. Each one felt like a reminder of the possibilities that could still exist in his life, if only he had the courage to reach for them. Thomas leaned against the porch railing, feeling the cold wind on his face, and began to think about Lucas. After a few minutes of silence, the vibrating phone in his pocket brought new relief. It was a message from Lucas. "Hi, Tom. Shall we meet next week? I missed you." A wave of emotions hit him. What should he respond? The urgency to open up and the insecurity of being rejected clashed within him. But rather than avoid the message, he decided it was time to be honest. "Hi, Lucas. I missed you too. We can meet, but I need to talk about some things." The response was instantaneous. "Of course. I'm here for you. Shall we meet at the cafe on the corner?" Thomas's heart skipped a beat. He was about to open a door that had been closed for so long. "Yes, at 3 p.m.? Perfect. See you then." With the phone in his hand, he felt a mixture of fear and relief. It was the first step towards a fresh start. The idea of opening up to Lucas felt terrifying, but also liberating. He remembered Sarah's words and how she had said that the truth is powerful. Now, Thomas was about to discover just how powerful it could be for him. The next morning, anxiety accompanied him as he prepared for the meeting. He looked in the mirror and saw a man who had carried too much weight for too long. He wanted the meeting to be lighthearted, but he knew he needed to be honest about his struggles. Anxiety pushed him to the back of his own mind, but he remembered what Sarah had said, "Every step counts." When he arrived at the cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee filled the air, and the familiarity of the place calmed him a little. Lucas was already there, sitting at a table near the window, his eyes lit up at the sight of him. "Tone, good to see you." He stood up and gave her a warm hug. Lucas's touch brought a wave of comfort that Thomas hadn't expected. He sat down, and as they made small talk, the tension began to dissipate. But as the conversation progressed, Thomas knew it was time to open up. His heart pounded, and he remembered all the times he had hesitated to be truthful. "Lucas, I need to tell you something," he began, voice shaking. "I've been going through a difficult period." I walked away from you and others because I was afraid of being vulnerable. I didn't want you to see my weaknesses. Lucas looked intently, his face expressing understanding. Tom, I would never stop being your friend because of this. We all face challenges. What matters is that you are here now. Luke's words were like a balm to Thomas's soul. He felt seen, understood. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to be true, even if it means facing my flaws. The conversation flowed naturally, and Thomas began to open up about his fears, his insecurities, and the pressure he felt to be perfect. Lucas listened attentively, asking questions, offering advice, and, above all, showing that he was there for him. With each word, each revelation, Thomas felt the weight on his shoulders lift. He realized that true friendship was not based on being perfect, but on being authentic. I was learning that vulnerability was not weakness, but a form of strength. As the conversation progressed, Thomas saw a new future emerging in front of him. He wasn't just reconnecting with Lucas, he was reconnecting with himself. The journey of overcoming was just beginning, but he knew that each step towards the truth would make him stronger. He was ready to face whatever came, no longer alone, but surrounded by friends who supported him. And so, as the sun set, illuminating the cafe in a soft, golden light, Thomas understood that Christmas was not just a time for celebration, but an opportunity for rebirth, where each day was a new chance to be true to yourself. And with those he loved. Thomas sat across from Lucas, taking in the cozy atmosphere of the cafe. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the space, and the soft afternoon light illuminated Lucas's face, who watched him with an encouraging smile. It was a simple but significant moment. Thomas realized that after so long, he was finally there, ready to open up. I really miss you, Tom, Lucas said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. You've always been an important part of my life, and I don't understand why you walked away. Lucas' words brought a wave of emotion to Thomas. He knew he had to be honest, but the truth seemed difficult to put into words. I didn't know how to deal with what I was feeling. I was afraid that if I showed myself vulnerable, you would see me differently, as if I were weak. Lucas leaned forward, his gaze serious. Tom, we all have our weak moments. That doesn't make us any less valuable. In fact, it can make us stronger. I would never look at you any differently because of that. These words touched Thomas's heart. He had always believed he should be strong and unshakable, but now he saw that true strength lay in allowing himself to be seen. He took a deep breath, feeling the tension in his body dissolve a little more. I really need to learn this, he admitted, his voice a little firmer. I need to learn to trust myself and you. We're in this together, Lucas replied, an encouraging smile on his face. And you don't have to do it alone. I'm here for you, I always will be. Thomas looked out the window, watching people pass by. He realized that, just like those people, everyone had their own stories, their own challenges. He wasn't the only one struggling. This idea brought a new type of comfort. Sometimes I feel like I failed at a lot of things, he confessed, turning his gaze to Lucas. Like I lost control of my life. Failing is part of learning, Lucas replied, his voice calm and collected. Our failures do not define who we are, but they shape our path. You can use these experiences to grow and become a better version of yourself. Thomas pondered this. He recalled times when he was hesitant to try something new for fear of failure. Every missed opportunity weighed on him, but now, listening to Lucas, he began to see these experiences in a new light. He could rewrite his story. Maybe I need to start seeing my failures as lessons, he said, a glimmer of hope beginning to dawn in his heart. Exactly, Lucas exclaimed excitedly. And each lesson brings new knowledge. You are allowing yourself to learn and grow, and that is something that should be celebrated. The cafe was starting to fill up, and the energy around them felt vibrant. Conversation and laughter from other customers created a welcoming scene, but for Thomas, the focus was on Lucas and the connection they were reestablishing. I never realized how freeing it could be to talk about it, Thomas said, a genuine smile forming on his lips. I always thought I had to carry this weight alone. You don't have to carry anything alone, Lucas said, leaning a little closer toward Thomas. Friendship is about mutual support. I'm here to help you, just like you've always been there for me. The conversation flowed, and the more Thomas opened up, the more he felt the weight on his shoulders lift. He began sharing not only his insecurities, but also his hopes for the future. He talked about his dreams of traveling, his passion for writing, and how he always wanted to explore new opportunities, but felt trapped by fear. Every word that came out of his mouth made him feel a little lighter. I want to try new things, he revealed, a gleam of determination in his eyes. I want to allow myself to make mistakes and learn. I want to build a life that truly reflects who I am. And you can do this, Lucas said, the confidence in his voice clear. Life is a journey, and every step you take is a chance to rediscover yourself. Don't be afraid to allow yourself to make mistakes. Every mistake is an opportunity for growth. The conversation continued, and Thomas found himself beginning to apply the lessons he had learned. He was opening himself up to new challenges, allowing himself to explore his interests and passions without the weight of expectations of perfection. The idea that true success lay not in material achievements, but in building genuine relationships and finding personal balance, began to make sense to him. I'm ready to face my fears, he said, a mix of anxiety and excitement. And I want you to be part of it. I want to explore the world and learn alongside you. I'd love that, Tom, Lucas replied, a twinkle in his eye. Let's do this together. Every step you take will be a step that I will be by your side. With those words, Thomas felt stronger than ever. He was beginning to understand that life was not about being perfect, but about being authentic. He was learning to embrace his vulnerability as a form of strength, and it was transforming him. As the sun began to set, casting golden rays through the cafe's window, Thomas realized that this day marked the beginning of a new journey. He was ready to allow himself to live fully, accepting his flaws and celebrating his achievements, no matter how small. And, most importantly, he knew that, alongside Lucas, he would not be alone on this journey. As the sun set, casting a soft light over the cafe, Thomas felt his heart quicken. He knew he was about to face one of the biggest challenges of his life. The light, encouraging conversation with Lucas had created a safe space, but the idea of opening up completely haunted him. There was a voice inside him, an echo from the past, that whispered that he wasn't good enough, that his fears were justified. What if I fail again? The question appeared in his mind, like an ominous shadow. He had distanced himself from Lucas, believing it was easier to face his fears alone. Now he was faced with the opportunity to reconnect, but the fear of rejection still held him back. Thomas looked at Lucas, who was watching him with a mixture of concern and hope. Lucas, what if I don't make it? What if I fail again? Lucas took a deep breath, his expression serious. Tom, what matters is not how far you get, but how hard you work to get there. What you consider failure may just be a step on your path. I will be here no matter what happens. These words penetrated Thomas's mind. He remembered his past attempts to follow his dreams, the auditions that didn't go as he expected, the texts that weren't published, the opportunities that slipped away because of his insecurity. The pain of those memories enveloped him like a heavy chain. He found himself in those situations, fighting the inner critic that was stopping him from moving forward. I don't want to be a failure, he confessed, his voice breaking. What if this is the only chance I get? What if I can't get up again? You're looking at this the wrong way, Lucas replied, his voice soft but firm. Failure is not the end. It's a part of the process. Every time you fall, you learn to get up. You have to allow yourself to make mistakes. And, most importantly, you have to allow yourself to be supported. Thomas closed his eyes for a moment, trying to convince himself it was true. Fear and doubt were so ingrained in him that the idea of allowing himself to fail seemed almost impossible. But as he opened his eyes again and looked at Lucas, he realized he wasn't alone. There was a strength in their friendship that encouraged him to step forward. What if I just don't know how to start? Thomas asked, insecurity showing in his voice. Then start small, Lucas suggested. Choose one thing you've always wanted to do and take the first step. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start. Thomas felt a surge of emotion. He had always loved writing, but had strayed from that passion for fear of not being good enough. Now the idea of taking out a notebook and scribbling down some ideas seemed less daunting. He decided he would allow himself to try, no matter the outcome. The important thing was that he was willing to put in the effort. "I want to write a short story," Thomas said, feeling firmer in his words. "I want to tell a story about overcoming, something that I am going through myself." Lucas smiled, excited. "That is great. And I would love to read what you write. Let's do this together. You can show me your ideas and we can work on them." Lucas's invitation brought a new sparkle to Thomas's eyes. He was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The pressure he felt began to ease, and the idea of sharing his process with someone who supported him felt lighter. But suddenly the fear returned with a vengeance. What if I'm not good enough? What if what I write is just a waste of time? Insecurity enveloped him again, like a dark cloud. Lucas noticed the change in Thomas's expression and grabbed his hand, as if it were an invisible cord of support. "Tom, you don't have to be perfect. You need to be authentic. That is the true beauty of art. No one expects you to create a masterpiece on the first try. What matters is your voice, your story." Lucas's words sank deep, resonating with Thomas's most vulnerable parts. He was beginning to understand that true failure was not making mistakes, but not trying. Life was not a straight line of successes, but a series of ups and downs that shaped who he was. With Lucas's hand holding his, he felt a warmth in his chest. "I want to try," he murmured, determination rising within him. "I want to free myself from this fear." "Then do it," Lucas encouraged. "Write. Try. And remember, I will be by your side, no matter what." The tension that had once consumed him began to dissipate, and a new emotion took its place: hope. Thomas smiled, feeling lighter. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for once, he was willing to face it. He was ready to accept his failures and turn them into lessons. "Thank you, Lucas," he said, gratitude overflowing his words. "For always believing in me, even when I can't. You always had the potential, Tom. You just needed to find the courage to let yourself shine," Lucas replied, a warm smile on his face. As the sun finally set, Thomas felt that the darkness was not something to fear, but an opportunity to start over. He was ready to write his story, and not just as a success story, but as a story of overcoming, friendship, and self-love. He knew that every word, every mistake, would take him closer to becoming the person he always wanted to be. And with Lucas by his side, he felt ready to take the first step towards this new journey. Thomas took a deep breath, feeling the gentle breeze that enveloped the cafe. The conversation with Lucas wasn't just an outburst. It was a new perspective on his life that was beginning to form. He looked at his friend and saw more than support. He saw a bridge that led him to a future that previously seemed distant. The idea of opening himself up to the world, of writing his story, now pulsed within him like a new purpose. In the days that followed, Thomas made the notebook an extension of himself. With each page he filled, he felt freer, as if each word written was one less burden. He started with short stories, inspired by his own experiences. Each narrative became an opportunity to reflect on your insecurities, your failures, and, most importantly, your victories. And even though doubt still crept in from time to time, it wasn't as oppressive anymore. Luke, in turn, became his most ardent reader. He was always ready to offer feedback, and his words of encouragement made Thomas feel like his voice was truly heard. "That's incredible, Tom. You managed to capture the essence of what it's like to fight your own demons," Lucas said, and those words gave Thomas the confidence he needed to continue. As Thomas wrote, he began to realize that his experiences were not just personal, but universal. In his tale of overcoming, he described a character who, like himself, struggled with internal voices of doubt. He expressed the emotions that had previously imprisoned him, and as he did so, he felt a weight lift. It was as if every word helped him reconcile with his past. The impact of this new journey was also visible in Lucas. The friend who had always been by his side now felt inspired by Thomas's determination. He began to explore his own creativity, experimenting with photography. The two became a source of support for each other, sharing not only their achievements, but also their vulnerabilities. It was a friendship that deepened, rooted in mutual understanding of individual struggles. One night, as they were reviewing Thomas's writings, Lucas commented, "You know, Tom, I've always admired your ability to open up. It made me want to explore my own art. I never thought I could capture moments through the camera, but now I see that it is a way of telling stories too." These exchanges of ideas became a new ritual for both of them. They discussed their passions, encouraging each other to follow their creative instincts. Thomas realized that the friendship that had previously seemed like just emotional support had now transformed into a partnership of growth and discovery. As time went by, Thomas began submitting his short stories to publications. Although he still felt butterflies in his stomach when he pressed the send button, the courage Lucas had given him meant he didn't back down. And as he waited for answers, he learned to embrace uncertainty. Each rejection, instead of a blow, became an opportunity for reflection and learning. If not now, maybe later, he thought, understanding that true success was not limited to winning awards, but allowing himself to try, take risks, and grow. Furthermore, Thomas's internal change began to impact other areas of his life. He became more open in his interactions, talking more to acquaintances, and even forming new friendships. The fear of being judged began to dissipate, and he realized that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but of strength. He learned that opening up to others also meant allowing them to open up to him. Thomas's journey has not been without its challenges. There were days when the doubts came back, whispering that he wasn't good enough. But instead of letting it get him down, he turned to Lucas, who was always there to remind him of his progress. "Remember, Tom, you are not defined by your flaws. You're what you do with them," Lucas said, and those words became a mantra for Thomas. In one of these moments of uncertainty, Thomas decided to share one of his short stories with a local writers group. The nervousness was palpable, but the desire to connect and be heard overcame the fear. As soon as he read it out loud, he felt the audience's attentive eyes. The response was warm and encouraging, and for the first time, he felt like his story mattered. He wasn't just a writer, he was a storyteller, and there was a beauty in sharing his experiences with others. At the end of the meeting, one of the participants approached him and said, "Your words touched a part of me that I didn't know needed to be heard. Thanks for sharing." This recognition, although simple, made Thomas's heart overflow. He realized that by allowing himself to be vulnerable, he was not only healing himself, but also helping others on their own journeys. Over time, the friendship between Thomas and Lucas solidified even more. They became co-authors of a project that combined their passions, a book that combined stories of overcoming and photographs that captured the essence of significant moments. The project became a symbol of their individual and collective journeys, a celebration of the friendship and creativity they both learned to value. Thomas looked back and saw how his life had changed. He was no longer the man imprisoned by fear, but someone who embraced uncertainty and vulnerability. And, most importantly, he learned that true success was not in avoiding failure, but in getting up after each fall, safe in the knowledge that he had friends by his side. With a smile on his face, Thomas felt a wave of gratitude. He had found his voice, and in doing so, he had rediscovered not only his passion for writing, but also the beauty of friendship and the strength of resilience. Life, with its complexities, now seemed like a blank canvas, ready to be filled with new stories, new experiences, and new achievements. Thomas looked out the window of his new office, a small space he had set up at home. The walls were adorned with paintings that mixed his written words and Lucas's photographs. As the sunlight filtered through the curtains, he reflected on the journey that had led him here. There was a time when he felt trapped, unable to open up or express his emotions. Now, he was a transformed man, someone who not only wrote, but also inspired others with his stories and experiences. Life had changed significantly for Thomas. He had published his first book, a collection of short stories that explored themes of overcoming, friendship, and vulnerability. The welcome was warm, and what was once a distant dream was now a tangible reality. He realized that by opening himself up to the world, he had created a space where others also felt comfortable sharing their stories. At launch events and literary meetings, Thomas met people who, like him, were struggling with their own insecurities. And as he listened to their stories, he felt even more empowered. The impact of his journey was not limited to just him. Lucas, his faithful friend and companion on creative adventures, also flourished. Photography, which was once a hobby, turned into a passion and, eventually, a career. They collaborated on projects that brought words and images together, creating a visual narrative that touched the soul. Thomas has seen Lucas grow, not just as an artist, but also as a person. Their friendship deepened, sustained by mutual understanding and respect for the struggles each faced. Reflecting on everything he had been through, Thomas realized that his limitations were not insurmountable barriers, but rather steps that took him to a new level. He learned that true success was not measured in terms of wealth or recognition, but in the ability to connect with others and inspire them not to give up on their own dreams. For him, each rejection had become a learning opportunity, a chance to rebuild and start over. He learned to value the process and the journey, rather than focusing solely on the results. The wisdom Thomas gained along the way helped him face new challenges with a different perspective. Instead of fearing failure, he began to see it as a natural part of life. This new approach not only freed him, but also influenced those around him. He became a mentor to young writers seeking guidance and support, sharing his experiences and encouraging them to follow their own creative paths. His story of overcoming became a source of inspiration, not just for him, but for a new generation of dreamers. The life lessons Thomas learned helped him live more authentically. He became more present in relationships, valuing small, everyday interactions. The friendship with Lucas, which began as support in difficult times, turned into a vibrant and creative partnership. They not only shared successes, but also the difficulties and uncertainties that life presented. This connection strengthened them and taught them the importance of empathy and mutual support. Over time, Thomas also began to explore new forms of expression. He ventured into lectures and workshops, where he shared not only his works, but also his life experiences. At each event, he talked about the importance of allowing yourself to be vulnerable, of opening up to the world, and how liberating this could be. He encouraged others to embrace their stories, find beauty in their struggles, and see themselves as protagonists of their own narratives. The peace Thomas found on his journey was palpable. He has not only reconciled with his past, but also learned to live in harmony with his emotions. The experiences that once tormented him were now memories that helped him grow. He found comfort in writing, which became a safe space to explore his feelings and share his reflections. Thomas and Lucas' friendship proved to be one of the strongest pillars of his life. Together, they explored the world of art and creativity, finding new forms of expression and ways to support each other. This relationship transformed the way Thomas saw the people around him. He learned to appreciate the diversity of human experiences and to value each connection as an opportunity for growth. As he finished another day of work, Thomas felt a wave of gratitude. He had turned the page on a difficult chapter and was now writing a new story, one that reflected his resilience, creativity, and love of life. The journey of self-discovery and overcoming had not been easy, but every step had been worth it. He smiled, knowing the future was a vast field of possibilities. And as he looked at his blank pages, he felt ready to fill them with new stories, new achievements, and new friendships. Life, after all, was a beautiful, constantly evolving narrative. Thomas sat at the table, surrounded by his words and photographs that told a story of transformation. He stared at the blank page before him, a space that symbolized not only what was yet to come, but also everything he had already achieved. In this moment of reflection, he realized that his journey was not limited to a simple act of writing. It was an ode to overcoming, a testimony that it was possible to be reborn, even after the biggest storms. He remembered the nights when doubt and insecurity paralyzed him. It was a familiar feeling, but now, with a new understanding, that insecurity felt distant. Every rejection he had faced turned into a lesson. Every mistake became a stepping stone to the next level. Thomas knew that true success was not measured in awards or book sales, but in the connections he had created and the lives he touched with his stories. He laughed as he thought about how he once threw himself into a sea of comparisons and now swam in an ocean of gratitude. With a smile on his face, he recalled a recent conversation with Lucas. "Do you remember our first literary event?" asked Thomas, his eyes shining with the memory. Lucas nodded, a mischievous smile forming on his lips. "Yes, you were so nervous you almost couldn't read your text." But in the end, the connection with the audience was magical. Thomas laughed, remembering the tremor in his hands and the trembling voice. "It's amazing how everything has changed. Now, I don't just talk to an audience, I talk to them." Lucas looked at Thomas with a look that mixed admiration and pride. "You found your voice, and that made all the difference. Your story is now the story of many. You inspire them to open up, to allow themselves to feel, and to fight for their dreams." These words resonated with Thomas like an echo of his own journey. He realized that by sharing his vulnerabilities, he had created a safe space for others to express themselves. The friendship between the two had become an unbreakable bond. They supported each other, and the creative journey they had taken together was a testament to the power of friendship. Thomas knew he wasn't alone. Every step he took was accompanied by Lucas's constant presence, as well as the sunlight that illuminated his office. As he was lost in thought, he remembered a young writer he had met at a workshop. The boy, full of passion but haunted by doubt, sought out Thomas after the performance. "How did you manage not to give up?" he asked, his eyes full of hope. Thomas looked at the boy and sincerely replied, "I learned that every day is a new chance. The important thing is to get up, even when you feel like you can't." Those words echoed in Thomas's mind now as he prepared for another day of writing. He felt like a guide, a beacon for those who were still navigating their own storms. This new perspective filled him with renewed purpose. With a deep sigh, he turned his attention to the blank page. There was so much to be written, so many stories and lessons to be shared. Thomas understood that life was an ever-evolving narrative, and he was ready to continue writing his chapters, one day at a time. And then, something unexpected happened. A message flashed on his cell phone. It was from a longtime friend, someone he hadn't seen in years. "Hi, Thomas. I heard about your book and wanted to talk. I feel like I have something to share with you." Thomas's heart skipped a beat. He remembered the friend who had drifted away at a difficult time in her life, and now she was reappearing. It was as if life was giving him another opportunity to connect, to heal. He smiled as he responded, "Of course, let's meet. I look forward to hearing your story." At that moment, Thomas realized that, despite all the changes he had faced, some things remained constant: friendship, connection, and the ability to start over. Thomas's journey was a testament that life always offers new opportunities, even when you least expect it. He realized that every ending is actually a new beginning. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and hope, he prepared to write not only his story, but also the story of all those who crossed his path. And now, he invited everyone to reflect on their own journeys. What stories have not yet been told? What connections have not yet been made? Thomas knew that each of us carries a unique narrative, and he challenged everyone to embrace their experiences, allow themselves to be vulnerable, and seek beauty in struggles. If you also feel the need to share your story or be inspired by others, leave your comments and experiences. Let's create a space where everyone can feel free to express themselves. Together, we can form a vibrant community of support and inspiration. Like and subscribe so that more stories like this can reach more people. The time to act is now.